Hello, and welcome back to the Fit House Podcast. Christopher, how are you doing today?
I'm doing wonderful, Gina. How are you doing?
Oh, I'm doing peachy.
All right, the topic, we're going to do something new. It's called 2 Things I Know For Sure. So the topic today is 2 things I know for sure about nutrition. You want to go first, or would you like me to go first? Or you want to take turns?
Yeah, we could take turns. I like that.
All right,
But you can go first.
All right. One thing I know for sure about nutrition is that there is not one thing that works for everyone. And I used to think a little bit differently about this.
That was going to be mine.
Oh, was it? Well, sweet. We could share one. Well, maybe you and I have different thoughts on that one thing we know for sure and how we've arrived at that conclusion.
True.
So I used to be of the opinion that humans are a species, correct?
Mm-hmm.
There is not one other species in existence that one member of that species does better on a different type of diet than another member of that species. So like koalas eat eucalyptus, right? So I used to be of the opinion that everyone really at a base level would flourish doing the same thing. But that opinion has changed, and I think it goes into a mix of genes and epigenetics. And what I mean by that is, I do think genetically people are different. My family is not far removed from coming from southern Italy. And when you look at the genes of even just southern Italians versus northern Italians, the genes could not be any more different. And people have adapted to different types of diets based on geographically where they are from. So that's one reason why I think in terms of genetics that different people do better with different things.
Mm-hmm.
But then another reason is I just think in our world today, we have become we've found ways to alter and mess with our genes. So you're pregnant right now.
I am.
You are pregnant right now. And the foods you're eating are going to have an effect on our child, correct?
Mm-hmm.
So I like to blame everything on my mother all the time. Like any problems I have, it was because of what she ate when she was pregnant with me. But I say that half jokingly. I love my mother very much, and my mother did the best that she knew how. But at the same time, the other half of me is not joking, because I know there are different things that led my genes to express themselves in different ways, because we live in a different world than there was a couple hundred years ago. Does that make sense what I'm getting at?
Mm-hmm.
So I do think that even though on paper lots of different diets are great, they might not necessarily work for each person.
Yeah. I think from a nutrition coach standpoint, where I was going with that is like the best plan for you is one that you can follow and be consistent with. And I see like so many people be, like I see people thrive on like both ends of the spectrum. And I'm thinking of one young lady in particular who, like, if she doesn't have a certain amount of carbohydrates in her diet, she cannot function.
Okay, but this is something that I disagree with, though, because I don't disagree with the idea that some people require more carbohydrates than others. But I do think that some people get themselves into a position where carbohydrates are never going to get them out of that position. Like sometimes somebody does something really unbalanced to get to where they are,
Mm-hmm.
and you're not going to get back to health by being balanced. You're going to have to be unbalanced in the other direction. Does that make sense? And also, some people are just addicted to carbohydrates. Their body does not actually require the amount of carbohydrates that they're addicted to.
But let me ask you a question.
Well, can I add one caveat?
Yeah.
So I think whatever the nutrition is, if you say it's different for each person, it also has to be giving the results that that person's looking for. So
Totally.
if that person's not getting results, then you can't say, well, that person needs carbohydrates because mentally they're addicted to it.
She's getting results.
I don't even know who you're talking about.
Oh.
I'm just saying in general. What were you going to say to me?
Like, I just think that the most successful that you can be is going to be when you're consistent with something that makes sense, right? It still has to, in the grand scheme of things, make sense. But if you can't follow it, it's worth nothing. And I think, everybody does well with a certain type of nutrition plan. But I think that, and you can disagree with me, that's okay. But I think that everybody, they have to feel good about it and they have to be able to follow it.
See, I agree and I disagree because I feel like I agree.
You can let us know in the comments below
there
who you agree with.
There needs to be a mental buy-in, and we always say we like to meet people at their level of participation. So let's take an example. Let's just make somebody up. Let's say somebody has had way too many carbohydrates for their lifetime, up until that point, right?
Mm-hmm.
Eating more carbohydrates is not going to get them to the point where they can handle carbohydrates again. They're going to need to go through a period, like it or not, where they are not having carbohydrates. Do you disagree or agree with that?
I think that they could do a very limited amount of low glycemic,
okay, so
berries or
irrespective.
fruit or
So either they're
that.
doing lower carbs or no carbs, correct?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
But so at the end of the day, that is eventually what needs to be done. So the way you like to do it is you like to start slow and move in that direction. And I do see the value in that. The way I personally like to do it is
it depends.
I just like to start there.
It's very dependent on the person. It depends on where they're at, starting level wise, mentally. And for me, I never have felt like that. I always just want to jump into it.
Okay, but I get what you're saying, but I guess my whole thing is eventually you have to be seeing results.
Totally.
The person that we're talking,
100%.
the made up person that we're talking about, maybe I'm just making numbers up, but this made up person we're talking about, let's say they're starting with, let's say it's a woman, let's say 150 grams of carbs a day, kind of like a middle ground, right? At some point, that is going to come down. So if they are mentally buying in with getting on track and starting with that number, fine. Mm-hmm. But eventually it needs to come down at some point. And then it could go, oh no, Taya's up. It could go back up at some point in the future, but you have to be seeing results. You can't just say, I'm not talking about somebody just saying oh, I have a preference for carbs, so I'm going to eat like this, but my body's not healthy on the inside. I'm not seeing the results I'm looking for. If that's the case, you are probably not a carbohydrate tolerant person. And vice versa. You could be somebody who loves eating high fat, but eating high fat is not giving you the health results you're looking for. It's not giving you the physique results you're looking for. You're a person who actually does require some more carbohydrates. So I really think the caveat is you have to be seeing results from what you're doing. It can't be a personal preference. You don't get an opinion over how your genes work. I want my genes to work this way. I wish my genes worked differently than my genes worked. But I don't get to have an opinion about it because that's just the way my body's going to work. So I think the value is you need to actually learn what your genes are and how your genes actually work, not how you would prefer them to work.
Yes. And I think we need to pick one more and then wrap it up.
All right, well, I'll do my second one. How's that then?
All right, fine.
All right, my second thing I'm positive about with nutrition is what gets you from point A to point B is not going to be the same thing that gets you from B to C or C to D. So back to the example, let's say the person that we're talking about, that example person, is on a genetic level a carbohydrate tolerant person, and they could flourish with carbs, but they've abused carbohydrates for the last X amount of years. So they did something unbalanced in abusing carbohydrates for X amount of years. Mm-hmm. Now, from point A to point B, they're probably going to have to do something unbalanced in the other direction. to get themselves back to healthy, to get their physique back to the way they want it to look. But then once they get there, perhaps genetically, they could go back in that other direction and their body's healthy again and their body can process and handle carbohydrates again. Do you have anything you want to add to that?
No.
No? Are you just trying to wrap this up because Taya's crying?
Yep.
All right. Well, how about we end this here today, and next week we could do the 2 things that you know for sure about nutrition.
Excellent.
All right.
Except you did steal mine, so I'll have to come up with that.
I didn't steal anything. I just came up with those off the top of my head.
All right. I hope you guys enjoyed this.
Have a wonderful day.
Have a wonderful night.
Bye.
Bye.